Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. Tonight's guest is a co-host of the Sports Dudes podcast and also does Puck Luck. It's the one, the only James Celestin. How are you doing on this Tuesday evening?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, man. I mean, the NBA season is going to start soon. The NHL season is going to start soon. We have football in full gear, and we have postseason baseball coming up. So I'm excited.
That's right. It's going to be a lot of fun this next couple weeks and whatnot. So in honor of the baseball postseason beginning next week for our beloved New York Yankees, and in honor of hockey starting next week, I decided to have 4 guests on the podcast, and each of them judge lists I made of the best 5 postseason and regular season wins. 2 separate lists from each of my favorite teams, and I picked you to do the Knicks with me because we are both big Knicks fans, and I love when you come on and talk hoops with me. So I came up with 2 lists, top 5 postseason and regular season's wins. We'll start with the postseason. Sounds good?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to go from 5 to 1, so there's anticipation. So my number 5 pick for best Knicks postseason win over the last 15 years, 2013 Game 1 against the Celtics. It was a low-scoring game at the Garden. Mike Breen and Jeff Van Gundy were on the call. I remember Boston had a double-digit lead that game, and the Knicks came back and won. Carmelo didn't have that great of a game, but the Knicks supporting cast took it to Boston in Game 1. What do you make of that game? What were your memories of that game?
That was great. I remember watching that game, and I was rooting on the Knicks, and I remember watching that game very fondly. And I was actually nervous. I didn't think the Knicks were going to win that series because, it's the Knicks and it's the Knicks.
Yeah, right.
It's the Knicks and the fact is that they actually won that game actually surprised the hell out of me. But the fact that they won it actually made me feel better, and I was really excited. And I felt like that game 1 win really sparked a lot. So I was truly, truly excited.
Yeah, I picked the Knicks in 6 games in that series, and ironically enough, they won that series in 6 games, so I was correct with my prediction because I thought that the Celtics were going to have one last hurrah with Garnett, Pierce, and Doc Rivers, and I thought that Celtics team was going to show up and play hard, and they came out with a big lead in the first half. Jeff Green hit a bunch of 3-pointers, and the Knicks prevailed in the end, so that was a fun game. I remember watching that in my old living room. My pick for number 4 best postseason win for the Knicks over the last 15 years was Game 4 win. I know they lost in 5, but beating LeBron in the Heat in the playoff game was exciting when LeBron was at the peak of his powers.
Oh, that was a really fun game. I think that year there was a lot of injuries that year. I think Stoudemire was injured, if I'm not mistaken. I think he injured his hand or something, but that was a fun win. I know we went out quickly, but, the fact that we actually beat LeBron and we got the gentleman's sweep, but it was fun. And no matter win or lose, especially winning that game, it was a lot of fun. And the simple fact that we actually beat LeBron, and I can say the Knicks beat LeBron in the postseason series.
Postseason game. Yes, they beat him in the postseason game. That was low-key a fun postseason game. And I remember Mike Bibby was on the Knicks that year, and he had a bunch of big threes in that game. Do you remember that?
I remember that. I remember Mike Bibby on that team. That was he was actually clutch for a while on that team. He had some really, really big shots for he hit some really big shots for the Knicks. So I vaguely remember Mike Bibby. I know people remember Mike Bibby more for his days with the Kings, but he was a baller for the Knicks.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. Solid bench player. My number 3 best postseason Knicks win over the last 15 years was their most recent postseason win, 2021 Game 2 against Trae Young and the Hawks.
Oh, that was great. I mean, hindsight, I really wish we would have won Game 1. But,
yeah, they should have won Game 1. I remember that series. Didn't Game 1 go to overtime?
I remember that. I'm talking about Game 1 where we should have won that game, and then we lost that game when Trae Young hit that shot. But Game 2 was great. I think my big memories of Game 2, if I'm not mistaken, didn't R.J. Barrett made that incredible dunk over Bogdanovich? And
Yes.
the Spartans just went all like, oh my God.
Yes. I remember that. That was a lot of fun. And my number 2 pick, ironically, has an iconic Knicks dunk over the last decade plus. Remember Iman Shumpert's one-handed dunk against the Pacers?
Oh, yeah.
That game's number 2 on my list. 2013 Game 2 against the Pacers. Responding at home after losing in Game 1. Iman Shumpert had the big dunk. He had a great game that day. And that game just remembers to me as the Shumpert dunk game. But it was just a fun game that they responded after losing Game 1. I know they lost that series, but responding in Game 2 at home in a resounding... I think they blew them out, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that was a big blowout. They blew them out badly in Game 2 after a letdown in Game 1. I think they were emotionally spent from beating Boston in 6, and I think they just laid a major egg in Game 1. But that Iman Shumpert dunk is the only thing I remember from that game was when Shumpert made that incredible dunk. So that to me is what I remember most about that game.
Yeah, and my number 1 pick over the last 15 years, best postseason Knicks win. I alluded it to the series earlier, that same series against the Celtics, Game 6. Knicks had a big lead. Boston came back to make it very interesting. And remember Carmelo hit a dagger 3?
Really? Yeah.
Carmelo hit a dagger 3. It was a Mike Breen bang shot, and the Knicks ended up pulling away late. And I remember the Celtics went on a 20-0 run, and I remember Knicks Twitter was freaking out, and people were saying that they were going to lose the game, they were going to lose the series, blow the 3-0 lead, and then they ultimately won that Game 6. Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember that, and I remember, fun fact, so when that series was taking place, when that game was taking place, it was ironically the same time when my New York Islanders were going up against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That's right! Oh my gosh!
They won. They actually won that game. They won 5-4 against the Penguins in Game 2. My buddy who was with me, who was a Devils fan, he was like, "Hey, yo, the Islanders won!" And I couldn't even enjoy the Islanders winning because I was so worried about the Knicks blowing that game.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Islanders, Penguins, and Rangers, Capitals. I remember the Rangers were playing Washington in that same first round, and I remember the Rangers won in 7. And the day after the Knicks almost blew that Celtics game, I remember the Rangers lost in overtime against Washington the next day, and I was pissed.
Oh my gosh! Cause see, that to me, I couldn't even enjoy the Islanders win until I knew for a fact that the Knicks won their game. Because let me tell you something, I was freaking out that the Knicks were going to blow that game and blow that series. But luckily, the Knicks held on, and I was able to enjoy the Islanders win because they were playing simultaneously. Because I didn't think the Islanders were going to beat Pittsburgh. That was a very weak Islander team, but for somehow, some way, the Islanders seemed to have Pittsburgh's number in the postseason, despite that particular series. But I was completely convinced that the Knicks were going to blow that series. But when the Knicks held on and win, that to me, in the last 15 years, I agree with everything on your list. That is a fantastic list, and I think that is number 1 because that was the only series the Knicks won in the last 15 years.
Yes, that's why I picked that game for number 1. Was there any postseason games that we forgot about or that you remember? Maybe Game 5 against Indiana, but at that point, a lot of people thought that we were going to lose that series anyway to Indiana. That was another postseason win. And then there was Game 3 and Game 2 against Boston that same year. Game 3, we blew them out in Boston, it was rock bottom for the Celtics before, and then JR threw the elbow.
Nah, everything you said was important because of the moments that happened. I actually agree with everything on your list. There is no need to add anything more. I think your list is spot on.
Thank you. All right, the regular season one. There were some really, really fun and entertaining regular season wins over the last 15 years. There might be some disagreements here. All right, my number 5 pick for the regular season wins. This is a very close to home. You know I love Carmelo Anthony, and you know I'm one of his biggest defenders, but his 62-point game against Charlotte's my number 5 on this list.
Okay. Really? I won't disagree yet until I hear the rest of the list, but okay.
There are some other ones I thought about, but we'll get to them later.
Go ahead.
But yeah,
I like that game.
I know they blew out Charlotte. The Knicks at the time were struggling. That was the 13-14 season. Woodson was in trouble. They got blown out on national TV on Martin Luther King Day against Brooklyn. And then I remember they lost at home against Philadelphia. The crowd was booing. And that was the Philly team that was tanking. And it was the year that Andrew Wiggins and Embiid were coming out. And then that Friday night, I was at a party and Twitter was blowing up about Carmelo Anthony scoring 62 points. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed this game. And then I remember watching the Knicks encore when I got home from the party, and he was just tremendous in that game. So, of course, I had to throw that on there. Maybe it's my love for Carmelo, but I really had to put that on there. Ready for number 4 on this list?
Let's do it. What's number 4?
Number 4, the 2011-12 season opening win against the Celtics, Christmas Day. That was the lockout year. And I remember Carmelo had a triple-double in that game. And I remember Garnett or Pierce had a shot to win it at the buzzer, and the shot didn't go down. The Knicks held on to beat the Celtics on Christmas Day.
All right. Okay. That was a good win. All right.
And that was the year after the Celtics swept the Knicks in the playoffs too. So
yes, I remember that one very, very well. That was the same year that we got swept out in the first round. Yes, I remember.
It was the year after that. Yeah. Number 3 on this list really hits me home a lot. But the post-Hurricane Sandy blowout win over the Miami Heat has to be on there because, again, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh at the peak of their powers. Melo was out of his mind, and it was the first wow of that season. And I think that game set a tone for the Knicks as they went on to win 54 games that year.
I like that game. Actually, that game really hit home as well. It hit hard, especially for someone who lost power. It was a really struggle when Sandy hit. But, man, I actually enjoyed – that was probably one of my favorite regular season wins. But, all right, that's fair. I just want to see what's number 2 and what's number 1. But, okay, those are some really, really good stuff. What's next?
All righty. My number 2. This past season, the overtime win over the Celtics on opening night where Jaylen Brown hits the shot at the buzzer to force overtime, and then the Knicks prevail. And Mike Breen called it the best opening night game in NBA history on the broadcast on ESPN.
I mean, listen, Mike Breen call, very, very great.
It was on ESPN too, not MSG. Just think about that for a second.
Listen, it was a great win, but I want to see what number 1 is. But that's a pretty dope win.
That was a dope win. I was so fired up after that game.
Yes, I was hyped.
And that was
what's number 1?
And number 1. This was, to me, my favorite regular season victory that I can remember over the last 15 years. Easter Sunday against the Bulls. The Knicks were playing for their playoff lives. Mike Woodson's the intern coach. Carmelo ties it against the Bulls to force overtime after Derrick Rose misses 2 free throws, and then Carmelo hits the game-winning 3 in overtime to win it.
Oh, that is easily number 1. That was one of my favorite games seeing live. I absolutely loved that game. I think that's number 1, and I like your list too. I think an honorable mention could have been R.J. Barrett's game-winning buzzer beater shot against the Celtics.
That's a good one.
That's another one you could have mentioned. You could have mentioned the Knicks
J.R. Smith
clinching a playoff spot last year
against the Celtics.
Yes.
Wait, that was against the Celtics, right?
Hmm?
Wasn't that game when they clinched the playoff spot last year against the Celtics at home? Yes, that was a
Yes.
good one too. And Boston came back and made that game interesting. It kind of was
Yes.
similar to the opener from last year. We have a lot of good
Yes.
wins over Boston over the last several years. Oh my goodness, especially like recently with Barrett and Randall. The opener against the Celtics, the RJ Barrett buzzer beater, which I forgot about. I can't believe I didn't put that. I think a couple
And then
other
and
honorable mentions.
and then the win beating the Celtics, and when Celtics made it back to us clinching a playoff spot. Not this past year, the season before, when we made the 4 seed. That was when we won that, when the Knicks haven't made the playoffs in like 7 years, when they finally ended their playoff drought.
Yup.
That one was there too. So those are some you know those are some those are some things, those are honorable mentions you could have listed. And I do love the RJ Barrett shot over Tatum, because it's very iconic,
Yup.
very iconic. Because it's like, if you even though this past season was a down season, as you know, for our Knicks, that shot was the highlight of the small little highlights of that season. So the Barrett buzzer beater shot was something that deserves an honorable mention.
Absolutely. And the two J.R. Smith shots, the one against the Bobcats and the one against the Suns, I forgot to put down on this list. But like I said, like you know how I feel about Melo, and that's why I put that game. And I feel bad because we didn't mention Linsanity either. That win over the Lakers and Kobe in prime time.
Prime Kobe, that's true. That's another honorable mention.
The Jeremy Lin game against the Kobe and the Lakers, and then didn't he have a big game against somebody else like Dallas or somebody like that?
Oh, Toronto. It was Toronto. It was Toronto. It was Toronto.
It was against Toronto.
He had that big game, and he hit the game-winning three over Calderon.
Over Calderon, yes. But there was another one that Lynn went off. It was an ABC game. Mike Tirico called it. I think it was against Dirk and the Mavs. I think. I could be wrong.
It was against the Mavericks. I remember Dirk. I think Lynn had over 30 against Dirk and the Mavs. I remembered that. Yes. It was an ABC game. Breen was calling it.
No, it was Tirico. It wasn't Breen. Breen called the Laker game.
No. It wasn't Breen. I think it was somebody else. It hasn't been. It wasn't Tirico.
I think it was Tirico.
One of the other guys.
Maybe it was Mark Jones. I think it was Mike Tirico, though. I vaguely remember Mike Tirico, got them all! I remember, like, the got them all shot, and that was, like, his call. That was his bang.
Tirico's the only person that does that.
Yeah, I want to say it was Tirico, but the Laker Kobe game was Breen. I remember that. And it's funny because remember I mentioned the opener from this past year against the Celtics? Mike Breen called that game on ESPN with Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, and he made that comment, the best opening night game in NBA history, or one of the best. And I think he was just giddy because the Knicks won.
You have to understand, Mike Breen is a lifelong New York Knicks fan.
Yes, so he's my favorite.
I'm pretty sure that, it wasn't the best win, but let's give Mike Breen slack. He grew up a Knicks fan, so I'm not going to kill him too hard.
Oh, I never kill Mike Breen. You know that. And I feel bad. Did you hear that Mike Breen's house got burnt down or something?
Yes.
Very sad.
Got burned down this past weekend. That's really upsetting. So that's terrible. So hopefully that gets all situated out. And also reading that Walt Clyde's not going to be doing a lot of road games this year because of his back. So you're going to see a lot of like mix and match. Like you're going to see Wally Zerbiak and other guys taking his place too.
Yeah, so, Clyde didn't do a lot of road games last year. It's similar to John Sterling. Like, John Sterling's not doing a lot of road games, and now Clyde's not doing a lot of road games, but for different reasons. But both of them are getting up there in age. But, yeah, you're going to see a lot of Wally. I think you'll see maybe, oh, my God, what's her name from MSG?
Monica Nutley.
Yeah, maybe. And here's a sleeper candidate. What about Jeff Van Gundy? That's my dream pick right there. It's only because we can have the ABC broadcast on MSG. I love when Breen and Van Gundy are together, or Breen and Mark Jackson, but I'm rooting for Van Gundy to randomly call a game on MSG with Mike Breen. That's just so funny.
That would just... that would just the irony would just write itself, man. I would absolutely look forward to that. So, but yeah, those are some of the Knicks points, and before we get into your quick rapid fire, I think the Knicks are going to be a little bit better than what people think.
Oh, me too.
I see them. I think the Knicks are a play-in team. I think the Knicks were unpopular opinion. I think it was smart for the Knicks to not go all in on Donovan Mitchell because as great as Mitchell is, he would have been great. I'm not trading R.J. Barrett for Mitchell. If I'm trading for a superstar, I want them to play with R.J. Barrett, not trade R.J. Barrett. And Danny Ainge used the Knicks tax because, that's what he did. And Cleveland, they're a deep team. That team's a top 6 team, but I think the Knicks are going to be in that 8, 9, 10 play-in range, and I think that's fine. And Jalen Brunson is a low-key solid pickup. He's going to make R.J. Barrett better, and I think at some point, if Randall doesn't change his game, I think Randall could be a prime trade candidate.
I think Randall's a trade candidate regardless, and that's actually a good starting point for rapid fire. You think the Knicks bounce back? I think they bounce back too. I am right there with you. I think they're somewhere between 7 and 10. I think if things absolutely break right, they could be 6th, but I'm not willing to go there. I think the highest I could see them is 6th if Barrett breaks out like I think he's going to, and some of these other teams in the East suffer injuries. But I'm going to say I'm leaning 9 right now, but I might put them 8. We'll see.
I think the Knicks at best could be a 7 seed. At worst, could be a 10 seed. I think there are so many good teams in the East in the Eastern Conference. I just think that the Knicks will bounce back. I think it'll be a better season. I think I think the Knicks will be fine.
Me too. And one more Knicks point before you move on in rapid fire. Tom Thibodeau. What did the Knicks have to do for him to save his job? Like, how did the Knicks do this year? Like, in terms of where do they have to go for him to come back?
If the Knicks get into the play-in seed and if the Knicks somehow get into the postseason, then I can see him coming back.
Me too.
The Knicks have to get back. If the Knicks do not get into the postseason, then the Knicks will absolutely fire Tom Thibodeau. And good credit to James Dolan. I don't give James Dolan a lot of credit, but he is leaving the decisions up to Leon Rose. And to Leon Rose's credit, he hasn't really done a bad job. Like, yeah, some of his signings haven't worked, but luckily he hasn't compounded the mistakes in, like, keeping them. Like, they have a nice, solid young core. Obi and Grimes and quickly will get better. But honestly, I do think that for the Knicks, if the Knicks don't make the playoffs or compete in the postseason, Tom Thibodeau is going to lose his job. And I think Tom Thibodeau knows that. And this is the job that he wants to coach. Well, if you want to be a Knicks coach, you have to understand that you got to play the young kids. I get you're relying on veterans, but you got to play the kids. And this is a young man's game. And you saw how the kids played. So that's what Tom Thibodeau has to do in order to keep his job.
I agree with you 100%. To me, they have to, even if they make the play-in tournament and lose, I think he's out. But say they make the play-in tournament and get through that and make the postseason, I think he comes back. That's my guess.
Saying they have to get into the play-in tournament and they have to get into the postseason. That's the only way I see Tom Thibodeau coming back.
100%. And speaking of teams bouncing back, do you think your Islanders bounce back this year?
The Islanders are a playoff team.
Oh, I agree.
I'm calling it right now.
Me too.
We're a playoff team. I'm not saying we are going to win the whole thing because we're not. I do think though that we're bouncing back. The Islanders are coming back. I think that unfortunately the East is a gauntlet. I see your Rangers being a contender. I see the Tampa Bay Lightning still being a contender. I see I see Detroit on the come up. I'm not saying they're a contender, but that's a team to keep an eye on. I think Pittsburgh's still a playoff team. Washington's probably not a playoff team, but I think though with the way that Tampa is, Toronto's always a playoff team. I think at the end of the day, I think the Islanders will bounce back. And yeah, that's what I think.
For the Islanders, the lowest I can see them, I think the lowest I can see them placing is fifth. And whether that's wild card or not in the postseason, but I think it's more like they are in the postseason than not. And the highest I can see them finishing in the division is second.
Yeah, I think honestly, hot take. I think the Rangers win the division.
Rangers, me too. Rangers win the division. I agree with you, 100%. I think it's the Rangers division to lose.
I have no faith in Carolina's goaltending. Their goaltending always seems to be bad. I think the Islanders, as low as they can finish, probably 4 or 5. I think that puts them borderline a wild card team. But I think if the Islanders play their game, even though it's Lane Lambert now and not Trotz, but Lane Lambert is carrying out the same principles as Trotz, I could see them finishing behind the Rangers. I think the Rangers are elite in almost every single position. If you're a Rangers fan, you have to be excited. You have an Vezina winning goaltender. You have elite scoring. You have the rise of Keandre Miller, who I think is going to be a Norris winner at some point. And I think the young Rangers got a taste of what it's like in the postseason. I think within the next 5 years, I can see the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup.
Me too. I don't think they're winning the Stanley Cup this season, but I think there's a real chance they do win one over the next 5 years. And I wouldn't be shocked if they actually did win it this season, but I don't think they will.
It wouldn't shock me. They're not winning it this year. I still think Colorado's good. I still think Tampa has something to be said.
Calgary?
Would the Rangers win it? Would it shock me? No. But would it shock me if the Rangers got to the Stanley Cup Finals? No. It wouldn't shock me if they win it either. It would shock me if they got bounced in the first or second round. I think the minimum, I see this team going to the Eastern Conference Finals again. That's how good they are from top to bottom.
I think the minimum for them might be out in the second round depending on Carolina's goaltending situation, but I think it's likely that they're in the Eastern Final again. That would be my guess. And then for the Islanders, it's either the first or the second round. I just don't know which one yet, because I really am high on your boy Sorokin.
Sorokin is my guy. I think Sorokin could be a future Vezina winner as well. I think depending on who they play, it's matchups. If they're in the Atlantic bracket, they're out in the first round because they're not beating Tampa. If they're playing your Rangers, they're also out in the first round. But it just depends on, the brackets, because the brackets have to fall for them. But I think first or second round is the bar for the Islanders.
I agree. All right, next item in rapid fire. We have 2 more to go. The next one. What are your takes on the 3-1 Giants so far?
The Giants, great defense. I absolutely love Don Martindale. He is fantastic. Saquon Barkley is back. Back. He's letting everyone know that he's back. And this man might mess around and win the rushing title and comeback player of the year in the same season. As far as Daniel Jones, look, I had this discussion off air with you. I'm going to say it on the air. There are 2 things that can be true about Daniel Jones. I don't think Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. I also don't think Daniel Jones is the guy for the future either. So I think he's, at best, a bridge quarterback to the next guy. And the next guy who's going to be the quarterback of the Giants, and you heard it here first, is going to be Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky. He is going to be the guy that's going to be the future of the Giants. But I think the 3-1 Giants, they're exceeding my expectations. I do think 7 to 8 wins is very possible. I love Brian Dable. I love Joe Shane. I think John Mara finally got it right and stepped aside and let his football people do his football job. So I do see that the Giants could, play meaningful games in December, which I'm very happy for. And I love it. So I'm actually for it. And look, will it hurt the draft position? Yeah. But as a fan, for building young players, you want to see them win games. Because if you have the right GM, it doesn't matter where you pick. You'll just know that they're able to make the right decision. So I'm happy with 3-1 Giants are standing. Like, I'm not sold on Daniel Jones, but I'm happy that the defense is playing well and Saquon Barkley is back and we have no receivers.
Yeah, so the Giants, I'm right there with you. Everything you said. I think that comeback player of the year is realistic for Saquon, even the offensive player of the year. If the Giants somehow end up with more than 7 wins, Saquon Barkley has to be in the conversation for offensive player of the year too. You can't rule that out.
Absolutely.
And Dayball for coach of the year too. Can't rule that out.
I agree. What's the last one?
It's going to be the one where everybody that I have coming on for this best wins over the last 15 years for each team is going to answer, because everybody's Yankee fans that I'm having on. How far does this team go this postseason?
Yankees are going to go to the World Series. Yankees are going to the World Series. I'm calling it right now. This is the year. This is the year that the Yankees finally slay the dragon. I know I've been saying this for a while, but this is the year. If Severino is back to doing Sevy stuff, if Garrett Cole can limit the home run damage, and the offense can be clutch, I agree. If the offense can be clutch in the postseason, where it matters the most, then the Yankees will, in fact, go to the World Series. Will they win? That remains to be determined, because I don't know the NL. But I will say that the Yankees are going to the World Series. That is my guess.
I love that call. I really, really hope you're right. But where things stand right now, I'm going to say that they are out against the Astros in the ALCS in 6 or 7 games. I don't feel good about it, because I think there's a chance that they can play the Rays in the first round, and that can be dangerous. Or, you know what? What if they steal Game 1 or Game 2 in Houston, and they get home field advantage, and they could win against the Astros potentially too? I mean, Garrett Cole revenge series against his former team, maybe. Like, I could see it too. Nothing would surprise me if coming to the Yankees. I would not be shocked if they lost to the Rays in the first round, or I would not be shocked if they won the World Series and knocked off the Dodgers or the Mets or whomever.
I'll put you this way. If the Yankees lose in the first round, there's going to be hell to pay, because this team ain't. I don't care. The Rays are not the same Rays. I get it. Glasnow is back, and I do love seeing Glasnow pitch, because he's a stud. But I'm sorry, you can't. Yes, and you cannot lose in the first round. Losing to the Astros, I would understand, because the Astros have always had the Yankees done. But I think this is the year, and I'll tell you why. Luis Severino is back. He's a stud. Garrett Cole, revenge game. He's back. I think Aaron Judge is going to have a monster postseason. And an underrated guy, Harrison Bader, is such an underrated pickup.
I agree.
He's going to come with clutch hits. He's basically replacing Aaron Hicks. Benintendi will likely be back in the CS when the Yankees advance. And then I think Yankees are winning.
All right, so I do think that it's likely that they go to the ALCS. I mean, they might beat the Rays, but the Rays make me nervous. Of all the teams they're playing, they could potentially play in the first round. Listen, I think the Blue Jays are frauds. I think the Mariners are frauds. I think the Guardians are the biggest fraud. But the Rays have the best chance to beat the Yankees. But if the Rays go so right now they're the 6th seed. If they flip with the Mariners, the Yankees should be doing cartwheels.
I think the Mariners are frauds. I'm not high on the Mariners. Look, the Mariners had a nice season. Cool for them. But if you're expecting me to be wet into my pants of the Mariners, you have another thing. I do like Julio Rodriguez, but outside of Luis Garcia, who in that rotation scares you outside of Luis Castillo? Nobody.
Right.
So there you go.
All right, so
the Yankees will be fine.
All right, let's see what happens in October. It all begins 1 week from today, where the Yankees will host the ALDS. And James, it was such a pleasure to have you on today.
Yes, madam. Thank you again. Can't wait to do this again real soon.
Yep, absolutely. Have a good night.
You too.